And if you don't mind, I would like to start with, let's talk about the murder. Now, that murder was so horrific. Does the verdict give you any solace?
It does and it doesn't. There's no way that it makes it okay. We are very thankful that 2 of the people involved are now in jail and looking at prison, but I'm not happy about that because it's a situation that didn't have to be like that. It didn't have to happen.
You mean
the murder?
Yes.
The murder, it didn't have to happen. It didn't solve anything. If anything, today looking back, it's ruined more lives than one could imagine.
When police told you what had happened to your brother, and you realized that Laura, Colin, Alex, and Paul Tucci were accused of doing these evil things to him, how did you react?
But when I was told that they were arrested, it started before that, even my feeling of it, because I walked in on her in Craig's house where she had no reason to be. And I hadn't been able to get a hold of my brother for the morning, which was odd. It's not like we talked to each other every single day, but if I called, he would at least say, I'm in a meeting, I'm doing this, I'll get back to you. And when my whole morning of trying to reach out to him gave me no response, I went to his house and she was in his house, and that was not right. So I got her out and ultimately went back and sat and called 911, and that evening is when I was told, when they brought the police advocate to me, that they believed that he had been a victim of a violent crime and that they thought that he was most likely dead. And it was numbing. But I kind of said, okay, how do you know it's him? And they said, we believe that it's him, we can't identify him. I said, all right, I'll go. Not that I want to see my brother dead, but if you need somebody to identify him, let me do it. And they said, we can't. And I said, well, why not? And they said, you wouldn't be able to recognize him. And at that point, I asked the police that were around me, oh my God, what did they do to him? Knowing, having found Laura there, that there was this very lengthy, very contentious divorce, things started adding up in my head that they might be culpable in this.
In your gut, could you imagine anyone doing what they did to your brother?
No. I having seen a picture, having to identify him in a picture, it is beyond me how anyone could do that to another person, let alone their spouse or their father.
At some point, though, you realized what had happened to your brother and that they were accused of this. Were you worried that nobody would get convicted of this during the trial? Were you ever doubtful of a conviction?
I was hopeful and doubtful in the range of emotions. I don't even think I could put a label on all of them. It was quite nerve-wracking. And when you have the prosecutor giving evidence and then the defense doing their job and countering and saying, oh, no, that's not what that was, no. It causes a lot of uncertainty and nausea, actually.
Mm-hmm. You talked about the contentious divorce.
Yes.
Were you ever suspicious that it could rise to the level that there would be violence like this?
There was an occurrence in January of that same year where my brother called me, having gotten home from work, and he found that his home had been trashed. There was broken glass everywhere, plates, glasses, light bulbs. Eggs had been thrown into the wall. There were holes in the wall where somebody had kicked the walls. And he called me in tears saying, I need your help. And I said, I'm on my way. I was already on my way to his house to touch base and see how they were doing. And when I got in there, Craig was on the phone with, I don't know if it was DSS or Child Protective, wondering what he could or couldn't do. And his kids that were there were locked in a bedroom. And ultimately, Craig did call 911 and they came out, but I was in awe that this could happen, and ultimately find out in the court papers this morning that it was all planned and that it was done in an effort to set him off. And the plan failed because he was worried, he was frightened for his children, especially the youngest ones. What happened if one of them had been injured in this?
And you think there was this plan that they were trying to frame Craig
I
because they
do.
wanted him to perhaps, act out and abuse the children some way, that they could use that against him in the custody battle?
I think that may have been their ultimate goal. And who the they is at this point, I can only imagine. There are the people who are now in jail, but it is mind-boggling that kids would turn and do this to a parent. Where did the direction come from? Why was it done?
An investigator I talked to yesterday said that Laura was the orchestrator on this every step of the way. How do you respond to that? Do you agree?
I don't doubt it. I don't doubt that there was her hand in it, in maybe an effort to get a better life. For whatever reason, she didn't feel that she had a great life with my brother. Obviously, she filed for divorce, but that wasn't the answer. That wasn't the solution to her problems.
Was your brother abusive anyway? I mean, describe him to us, because so many people don't know of him.
As a sister, my opinion, he was kind, he was loving, he was funny, he was good-natured. If someone needed help, he would try and help them. A lot of the youth from his youth ministry came and were very supportive to us and my family. And someone had said, well, why was he spending all the time with the youth? Why wasn't he spending the time with his family? It was my understanding that it was a family activity. Mm-hmm. I could be wrong, I don't know, but there are pictures that I've seen where it was not just Craig and these youth that he mentored, but that his kids were there. He helped his kids through Boy Scouts. His second son achieved his Eagle Scout, and there's a picture I remember of him pinning his son at this ceremony, and he was so proud of that moment. And the rest of the family was there. Laura was there, the children were there, I was there, my mom was there. There was no sign of this hatred.
Mm-hmm. And he had custody of the two younger children, but that was the contentiousness in the divorce and Laura being able to leave for North Carolina?
I think that they did want to take the younger kids with them, and when it became apparent to Craig that they were going to move, he had spoken with his attorney to say, please give me language that says they can't just take the kids across the state line. I want them to be with me. My family is here. They're in school here. They've got a routine here, and that is, I don't want to lose them, and work in some visitation. And that was not something I think that either Paul or Laura wanted. They wanted to have it was all or nothing.
Let's talk about Paul Tucci. He was the only one of the four acquitted of all charges. What was your reaction on verdict day?
I was shocked. I understand that the jury had a tremendous duty. There were 11 charges, there were 4 defendants, and I can't fault them. They went through the material that they were given and they came to the decision that they did, but it was a surprise because if you think about it, if we know that, at least by the court and by what I've seen and the jury's decision, Colin and Laura were there. But it would take somebody very strong to go up a flight of stairs, maneuver through a house, and get into whatever transportation they moved him in.
You think Paul was there?
I think Paul was there.
A lot of times jurors do not hear all the evidence that maybe even the public has heard.
Mm-hmm.
Things are not allowed into evidence, including some of the contentiousness, text messages, emails
Mm-hmm.
that you are aware of,
Right.
but the jury was not. Do you
Right.
think that played a part in Paul Tucci's acquittal?
Probably. I remember being copied in on several emails that were sent between Paul and my brother on behalf of Laura and wondering why does he have such a hand in what she's supposedly saying? I don't know. It just, he was found by a jury to not be guilty, but I feel that he bears more guilt for this.
It seems though the jury was convinced that Colin certainly had a hand in the murder. That's your nephew.
It's my nephew.
Can you imagine him wanting to kill his father?
No. I don't know what could have been said to him or what influence could have made him turn on his father the way that he did.
What is the reaction when you're out in the community from people? Are they unclear what was going on for your brother? They've only heard the evil parts. They've only heard about his murder. Nothing more?
Truly based on what has been reported. The public has been very supportive of us. And they are wondering why this contentiousness, what happened, where did it come unhitched? And I honestly don't know where it came unhitched. People who knew my brother, his coworkers, say he was nothing but kind and funny and loving. He was a friend to so many people that when they see this now, they themselves scratch their head and go, this is not the Craig that we know. Who is this person that they are trying to portray? Because it is the complete opposite of what my brother was and who he was.
And if Laura were the orchestrator of all this, his estranged wife, what would you say to her if you could meet her in jail?
I would ask her why. I would ask her if it was ultimately worth it. Not only has my brother been killed, but she and her son have been found guilty, and they are currently in jail, and they're looking at prison time. But it is so much more far-reaching than just she and her 2 sons, or PJ, or me and my mom. PJ's got kids of his own. This has affected them. And my kids, who grew up with my brother's kids and played with them and had fun with them at family Christmases and Thanksgivings, Easter. We always did big backyard parties. His family, all of Craig's family was allowed, was welcome to come. And to have this happen, was it worth it to ruin so many lives as well as your own, is what I would say to Laura. Because what about her parents and her siblings? It's not just my brother who's gone and their family that's affected. It's affecting everyone.
You live very close to the Tucci's.
Oh, yes.
There's a good chance you could run into Paul Tucci in Wegmans.
Already happened. Not since the verdict, but in the past year, I not only ran into Laura and PJ at Wegmans, but I ran into Colin and his fiancée also at Wegmans.
What was it like?
I said nothing at either meeting. My brother, through his divorce, said that he would act with grace and dignity. And I said, we support you in that. And when it was determined that it was he who was dead and what potentially would happen, and after the indictment came down, I said, we have to, my family and I, have to also handle everything with grace and dignity. So there was no scene. Each time I saw them, I was with my daughter, and we walked by, and as best we could, just walked by, didn't acknowledge, didn't say anything, didn't do anything, just carried on. Like we walked by people we didn't know and never knew.
What about the remaining Rideout children? Will you have a relationship with them?
I don't know. I have not seen the two youngest since the beginning of the week that Craig was killed. I haven't seen the two middle girls. Craig's son, who's in the Marine Corps, did reach out to me, and we haven't had lengthy conversations. He touched in with me to see how I was. I said to him, I hope you're doing well. Just very cordial. I would hope at some point that they would be able to reach out, would want to reach out if they're allowed. And I don't know what has been said about us. So the hope is there that if they want to, I would love to. We all would love to.
How do you carry on from here?
One day at a time, one breath at a time, just try and get used to a new normal. I still find myself reaching for my phone to call him, and my mom does the same thing. So it's hard.
What would you like people to remember Craig by?
I would like people to remember that he was a wonderfully kind person, very giving, funny, great sense of humor. He loved his family. He loved his children. Even through all of the hard stuff that was happening through the divorce, his hope was that they would come back, that they would come around and see that he wasn't a mean man, that he could restart a relationship with all of the kids. So, is a wonderful, loving man.